So non-essential information, as it's stated or as it's called, is things that are not pertinent to the sentence. Means even if you don't have that information in there, the sentence won't really change, or the meaning of the sentence won't really change. And if you see on the SATs, I mean, they give you 5 different sentences and they all look so similar, but you could break it down with positives and phrases in there, and hopefully it'll make more sense. So this is a lesson on non-essential information that hopefully will help you solve questions. So let's look at this. Apple Inc. or Apple Incorporated, seeking higher profits, hired part-time engineers to replace full-time staff. So what is the subject over here? Subject is Apple, right? And Apple, what did they do? They hired part-time to save money, basically, and got rid of full-time staff. That's the main idea, right? And the extra information that they put in here, the non-essential phrase, is seeking higher profits. So who is seeking higher profits? Apple, right? Now, if you take this out, does it still make sense? Apple hired part-time engineers. Yeah, it makes perfect sense, right? Although this is kind of giving a reason why they hired the part-time engineers, but the sentence still makes complete sense without having that seeking higher profits phrase in there, right? What about the next sentence? So this over here, this was the non-essential information, and it's usually signified with commas, just like positives, where they can replace, if you have a thing that could replace the noun, and they're optional, they have commas in it. But if they're pertinent, then they usually take out the commas, right? So this is the non-essential information. What about this sentence over here? Mike, who is 80 years old, walks 5 kilometers on a daily basis. Right? So Mike walks 5 kilometers on a daily basis, which is really good, right? And I guess the shocking part over here was what? That he's 80 and he still does this, right? But the sentence originally says he walks 5 kilometers a day. So this, who is 80 years old, this relative clause or relative phrase referring to Mike really doesn't change anything. So you could get rid of this and it still makes sense, right? So this is the non-essential information. Mike walks 5 kilometers a day. Who is 80 years old? This is talking about Mike, so this really doesn't matter. Now, here are the ones that do matter, and you'll notice that they don't really have commas inside them, right? Because they're essential. And whenever they're essential, I think this is a good rule to learn, or good comma rule, is if you really need the information, then you're not going to put commas in there. Commas, they're really important because they, give you brief pauses, they separate, give you extra information. But in this case, let's look at this one. The man who followed you is my brother. Okay, so you have to see, well, this one, the, extra information is not apparent because why? There's no commas in here. So what's the subject? Subject is man. And what did the man do? Man followed? Nope. That's not the functioning verb. The man is my brother. That's the main idea, right? The man is my brother. If you put commas there, if you put commas here and here, right? Then this becomes extra, but then the meaning of the sentence completely changes, right? If you put commas in here, the man is my brother. That's the main idea. But if you take the commas out, you say the man who followed you is my brother, then this whole idea of following, right? So I'm talking about a person who followed you. That person is my brother. If I put the commas in there, then the whole idea of following went away, right? So this is essential information, right? This is a relative clause, who followed, right? Talking about the man, right? That you really need, right? Otherwise it changes the meaning of the sentence. What about this one over here, this last one? The tall person checking tickets at the counter asked for my driver's license. So this is a little bit longer. So what is the subject? Person. And what is the person doing? This person is checking tickets, but what did he do? He asked, right? Person asked for something. That's the main idea. So the extra information here, this one has an adjective that's describing the person. And checking tickets, this is what the person's doing, right? The person checking the tickets asked for my driver's license. Now, let's take this out. Let's take this, I don't want to say non-essential, right? Because it is essential. Let's take out, if we put commas over here, it becomes non-essential. The person asked for my driver's license. Okay, that's fine, right? It's a perfectly good sentence. Except what happened? The meaning completely changed, right? in the original sentence, it tells you why this person's asking for your driver's license. Why? Because the person is checking the tickets, and in order to check the tickets, I guess they need to confirm that you are you, right? With the driver's license. But if you make this extra, you get rid of it, or not get rid of it, you put commas inside it, the main idea becomes person asked for my driver's license, which is not the same thing as why the person asked for a driver's license. So please note the difference between non-essential and essential phrases and clauses, and even words, right? They can completely change the meaning of a sentence. So try the question right after this. Alright, this is actually one of the more fundamental questions that you need to learn, so let's look at this. Fortune cookies were invented in Japan, and many people assume that it was China. Okay, so remember, A in this case is always the same as the original sentence, but in the paragraph editing section of the SATs, remember A is actually not the same as the answer, or it doesn't have to be. Oftentimes it is, but A is actually a different answer choice. So remember, you should do all questions the same way, right? Subject, verb, and what's the main idea of the sentence. And you should find out what the non-essential information is. So in this case, cookies were invented in Japan. That's the main idea. And I think what they're trying to say is that, a lot of people think it's actually from China, right? It was invented in China, right? So let's look at these questions. We'll skip A for now. We'll come back to it. B says many people assuming China, right? Assuming China. It doesn't even say in China, assuming China. So people assume China, right? Not assume they were invented in China. So it can't be B. What about C? Okay, this is good. Actually in B, it doesn't even have a contrast, and it looks like they want to give a contrast, right? Because China and Japan, they're completely different countries, even though they're in Asia, right? So C, this sounds very natural, and a lot of students actually pick C, right? But many people assume it to be China. Okay, so yeah, okay, I kind of agree with this but part, right? Many people assume it to be China, right? So invention to be China. That makes no sense, right? So cookies were invented in Japan, and in C it says people assume it to be China. It doesn't, that's not parallel in the sense that it was invented in Japan, but in C it says assume it to be China, right? Not parallel, so we can't have C as an answer. What about D? D also has a contrast, not, right? Not what many people assume being, right? This is just a whole jumble of words, and being, I told you, when you see the word being over here, you should be very, very cautious, and in this case this is just nonsense. So the correct answer is E. Okay, E says, so what is the non-essential information that we just learned about, right? The main idea is fortune cookies were invented in Japan, not in China. Right? That's the main idea. And so what is the extra information or extra phrase that they inserted in here? The non-essential information. It's this. As many people assume. So what do many people assume? That they were invented in China. Right? So fortune cookies were invented in Japan, not, as many people assume, in China. Right? And that sounds really good. And you could even take this out to make sure it makes sense, right? Not in China. Invented in Japan. In China. That's parallel. Right? And what's extra is this phrase over here. Let's look at A now, right? The original sentence that we didn't consider, right? Let's look at A. Were invented in Japan, and, so complete different idea, many people assume that it was China. Okay, now see if this makes any logical sense, right? There is no contrast here at all, right? So they link the sentence with the word and, many people that it was China. No contrast at all, so it can't be A. So the correct answer is E, and this is part of the lesson on non-essential information. And if you got this one wrong, really, try to understand why, because this type of question comes out all the time. I've seen it in so many different questions.